Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching 72 News. Good evening from Shoaib Zaidi. And this is the day we started the journey 4 weeks before. Yes, the journey of Queensland election. Queensland tomorrow. And to win these elections, Labour or LNP, and there was a lot of predictions, there were a lot of discussion. We have very good talk in last three programs, and today we are going to have last program on the election of Queensland. I'd like to thanks to in my studio, Dr. Bernard Malik. As usual, he's with us, but because everybody knows today in Queensland there was two storms. One, the storm from the weather. Another storm is that the results and election. So we'll see what happened with this one. But that storm, weather, make a difficult time for Mr. Bernard Malik. He is joining with us with his voice. I'd like to thank to Mr. Bernard Malik for his busy time. He's with us. I'd like to thank also Professor Pitman. He is joining with us. And today we are going to have a very special program. Let's start. I'd like to go to Professor Pitman. Professor Pitman, thank you very much. Dr. Bernard Malik, thank you very much. Let's start. First, we would like to see what are the results. What is the status now? How the elections is going on? Before proceeding to this one, I like to inform the rest of the world, especially Indian Pakistani peoples, that okay, the election time finished at 7 o'clock and 7:30, 7:45 now the time is, and we have lot of result. This is called a developed country, a system in place, and then there is nothing to call rigging and whatever it is. Let's go to the Professor Pitman. Yes, Professor Pitman, what news you have for our viewers? How the election results is going on now?
Yes, at the present moment, there's 93 seats to be won.
Yeah.
And on the predictions at the present time, there's 44 seats they're predicting that Labor will retain. The Conservatives, the Liberal National Party, 26 seats. And there's 7 seats have gone to minor parties, and there's still 16 seats that are too close to call.
Right.
Based on that, it appears as though Labor will probably be back in government.
So, okay, what is the current numbers game? What happening there?
Yeah, at the moment, about 20% of the votes have been counted in Queensland.
Right.
And they're suggesting Labor would have 44 seats. To win government, they need 47 seats, so 3 more seats.
3 more seats?
Yeah, to have government. They currently hold 48 seats, but Dr. Malik can probably talk about it because it's in his area. The previous Deputy Premier, Jackie Tran, looks like she will lose her seat. And that's a key seat that they've held for a long time. So at the present time, it looks like Labor will get the 47 seats.
Right. Wonderful. Let me go to the Dr. Bernard Malik. Dr. Bernard, thank you very much. You ultimately there was a lot of issue with the storms. Dr. Bernard, first I like to get from you. You are from India, and I believe that in Pakistan, in India, and these Bangladesh, Nepal, the election finished. Then there was a 5, 7, 9 hours gap, and then results coming. I like to know from you, for our viewers, how it's possible that you just finished the election at 7 o'clock and 7:30 you are getting the results. Then we will discuss more about how you're looking the elections. How it is possible?
Thank you, Mr. Zaidi. I think it's very, very exciting time today. Today I really feel I'm sitting in Queensland. I'm sitting at home in Punjab because of storm. The electricity is stormed out. I'm sitting in dark and trying to enjoy the TV still because of solar system.
Right.
I have solar system. I'm watching it, feeling at home. Yes. When you talk about elections back home, I'm surprised you said 7-8 hours wait. It is 7-8 days wait there.
Yes.
Because elections will end on 31st of October. The results would come only on 8th of November or 7th of November.
Right.
Because election the ballot boxes have to be transported to districts where they're kept in safe custody and then counted after 4 or 5 days.
Right.
Over here, elections actually ended at 6 o'clock. They started 8 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Results started coming out by 7.
7.
Yes. So you will see, though this is a bit strange election because there are 3.3 million voters in Queensland.
Right.
900,000 of them, almost 1/3 of them, voted by postal vote.
Right.
And because of postal vote, it could be a little bit delayed. Otherwise, I think there is Labour, as I always predicted in all my
Sure.
programs, I said Labour would form government, Labour would form government, and I think Labour is going to form government without problem.
Right. So the results is coming on time just because they have a system, digital system, and that's ultimately going to be okay. Now coming back to the numbers, do you think that at 7:45 or 7:50 the results is already clear, or still something can change the game show, Mr. Malik?
No, results, see, most of these are predictions. What happens is based on the way they calculate is, if last time somebody won by 3% margin,
Right.
and this time the swing against that person is 4% by the trend that they see. So they call an election even though the counting is not finished. So based on what they're calling, that is what we are predicting that this would happen.
Right.
So results could change. Results could very well change by morning.
Right, right. Let me know from Professor Pitman. Do you think that the numbers you share now that says that there's look, we are discussing about the total vote and then the seats. Total votes is still, we are very far from the total votes. However, the seats condition is quite clear. Do you believe that will remain the same, or it can be changed when you have the total count?
There's two parts to your question here. The first off is that they're predicting based off about 20% of the votes, but you could have a polling booth that may have a huge number of votes that is still in the counting, which is yet to come in, which may swing the vote. Alternatively, many Queenslanders have already voted. Almost 1 million have voted, and their votes are being counted, but some of them are postal votes. And if it's a very close number between the candidates, they may have to wait till Tuesday, Wednesday next week to count the postal votes. But you're only talking about maybe half a dozen seats in that category. For example, I see Pinky Singh is leading. Pinky Singh is leading. The problem she has is the candidate underneath her, Labor, is the incumbent minister. And when you put the votes from the Greens against the Labor vote, they have more than Pinky Singh has on just the first past the post vote. So right. Pinky's winning technically at the moment, but when the preferences are separated out, she'll probably lose.
Right.
I think if I may add,
you mean at this stage the number of the vote of the Pinky Singh is more higher. However, there is a possibility that when they count in total, she might lose the seat. Correct?
That's correct. Yeah, but Bernard might add to that comment.
Yes, in that seat, the interesting part is, though it has only once been won by Liberal Party, Liberal Party has always gotten more primary votes.
Right.
All the time, the primary vote of Liberal Party is more than the Labour, even though the Labour wins that seat all the time. So if they're just counting the primary votes, yes, Pinky Singh is winning, and I hope she does win, because I watched her campaign very closely and she worked as if there was no tomorrow. She brought in even Prime Minister to campaign for her.
Right. Mr. Malik, then what do you think that what Pinky's son, because Pinky Singh is struggling since long time, and every time, and before in third program you mentioned that she is really doing good, and then expected results are different than the last time. What exactly she done this time, which might change?
Look, for her, this is her first election.
Right.
She has gone straight to state, unlike some people go to council first and then step out state. She is full of zeal, works very hard. I have seen other campaigns where some parties have fielded candidates who are unemployed. Or I know some candidates who have job and can't take more than 2 weeks off for election.
Right.
In her case, she's been, ever since she was nominated to that seat, she's been working like crazy.
Right.
She brought in Minister Trevor Everts was all the time there. Ricky Howards, who is the councilwoman, she was there. She brought in Prime Minister. She brought in some heavy rollers. Me and Professor Grant attended a couple of dinners there with federal ministers out there. And I think she worked almost like she was a seasoned politician who had worked in that. So what she brought is a lot of resources, lot of zeal. Unlike the Labour candidate from Maiwar, Mr. Pilani, he did not do much.
Right, right. Going back to Professor Pitman. Professor Pitman, first of all, before raising the question, what is the current results with you?
It's suggesting that Labor now has, on the predictive model, 46 seats. It only needs one more to retain government. So they're within one seat on the predictive model. It's saying that LNP can't win and that Labor's within one seat of winning. And of course, they can always form government with a minor party if they want to. So the modelling is suggesting that
let's say on pro rata basis, how many seats has been cleared out of 93 seats?
They need 47 seats to win.
Right.
Saying they have 46 seats.
And how many seats are remaining for the results in total?
There's 14 seats that haven't been decided yet.
Right.
So 26 for the LNP, 7 for the independents, but another 14 seats yet to be decided.
Wonderful.
So they've only got to win one more.
So 14 seats gained will ultimately go. Now, still, Professor Pitman, we have the Anna. We are, she was trying to come back. They both has a different strategy. This is the first time in Queensland history we have the two female, strong female, and we discuss more in our programs how things are going on. And she from the city, she from the regional area. What is other things you find this time from Anna over to Deb that that's make her, like for me, I saw that she was very active on the social media. She was very active last week of election and just visiting different places, trying to gather and win the hearts. What else you see from the existing premier to the liberal candidate?
They said that there were 3 major issues that Queenslanders were considering. The first one was the economy.
Right.
And I think certainly Deb Fleckington, the opposition leader, was very strong in that area.
Right.
Anastasia had some very good policies, but Deb Fleckington, the opposition leader, had probably slightly better policies. The second issue was on leadership, which was more seen as more trustworthy, reliable, accepting. Probably Anastasia presented better in that area because of her issue on the third factor, which was the COVID-19 border issue. and a lot of Queenslanders believed above the Gold Coast, which is right on the border, that that was an excellent strategy. But the Gold Coast electorate areas believe it was a bad decision. And if there's going to be any swing, it'll be on the 2 or 3 seats right on the border. And Dr. Malik knows about 1 or 2 of those that he's been following. And they're very, very close seats, those seats on the border.
Right. I will go back to Dr. Malik. Before going back to the Dr. Malik, Professor Pitman, did the results are still same when I came to your side, or there is some change?
At the moment, there hasn't been much change from what I've just indicated, and they're calling out most of the results, and they're about 30% of the votes have been counted, so that's increased, but it hasn't changed a great deal from Labor winning. So at the present time, it's still on track for them to retain government.
Wonderful. Mr. Malik, I just asked Professor Pitman regarding the difference between the 2 candidates, and especially now the results are there. Ultimately, now we can talk about that what they done in when they campaign allowed. What you are looking from both sides. Professor Pitman already mentioned 3 different areas. If you like to add something on these 3 areas, or you like to add something more about on their struggle, on their campaigns.
I think my observation is that Labour did not win, LNP lost. They did not run a good campaign at all. They did not have a narrative. They were going against incumbent government. They could have said a billion things about it. Labour did not present budget at all, so they did not have figures. The only way Labour did good was because of the federal government, which is LNP government, gave out tons of money to keep people happy. When it comes to economy, Labour performed really poor. When it came to COVID keeping us safe, it was just a chance. If Labour had excellent policies on COVID management, why are they failing in Victoria? But because of the poor leadership, see, as me and Professor Grant, we were discussing the other day, now all the elections are very much like presidential type of elections.
Right.
Elections are fought so much in the leader's name, and leader goes around. I think Deb failed miserably in terms of providing leadership. They were Liberal Party was going to have change of leadership 2-3 months ago, and then some senior minister stepped in and said, no, this can't happen and all. I'm sure, and I had discussed it with some of the senior MPs and other officials of LNP that time. Had there been a change in the leadership, results would have been different today.
Right. And now you see now that 30% results already received, and out of 30%, they already just required only 1 seat. Otherwise, most of the results is almost same, which you predict, Professor Pitman predict, and we inform already to our audience and viewers that this is going to be happen, and we have the reasons for these things. Now, how you are looking at the results at this stage, number 1, and do you still like to predict something that Labour can form the government without the support of independent? The reason is still 14 seats results are still yet to come.
One of the difficulties is there's about, and I think Dr. Malik gave some information on this at one of the previous reports, that there are about 12 seats where the majority is only less than a couple of hundred.
Yes.
And so those seats will take some time to actually determine whether or not they're Labor, Conservative or Independents. So potentially you still could have a hung parliament tonight where Labor's only got 44, 45, 46 seats, and they may still need some independents to get up. So it's still probably a little close to call that they've won in their own right. But at the present time, the way it's going, they appear to be well in front to achieving that objective. But
Mr. Yeah, you like to say something about the hung parliament and about the current score?
yep. Well, if there's a hung parliament, for example, Labor only gets, say, 45, 46 seats, they're going to have to rely on some independents.
Right.
At the moment, it looks like 2 Green seats or Green Party seats in Brisbane. One where Dr.Bernard Malik works could end up a Green seat, and one over the north side. And Labor would have to discuss with them an agreement as to how to form government. And if they have them, then they can form government. And traditionally, the Green Party has always supported Labor.
Right. Mr. Malik, you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, Mr. Malik, now the same question again, many predictions we find, and Professor Pitman also sometimes refer the things to yours also. Ultimately, we'd like to know 30% results came, almost 1 seat required. Number one, I like to know from you that last election, the Green has 1 seat. Now they have 2. Do you think any special reason? And Professor Pitman also predicted that it might possible that the Green is going to be with the Labour. What is your opinion on that?
Green always goes with Labour.
Right.
Green is just a B party of Labour because they preference each other in the different seats. Right. In particular seat, the second seat we are talking, it's still in doubt actually, the South Brisbane seat where the former Deputy Premier who was accused of certain scandals had to resign. She still carried on as an MP and is contesting. Very strong Green turnaround there. If you go by what you see at the moment, Greens could possibly win, but anything would happen by morning. If that goes to Green, it is not a surprise at all. People do think it would go to Green. But my particular interest is two Indian candidates.
Yeah.
Seat of Mewar, which was actually held by Green, they brought in Polani.
Right.
He is a South Indian candidate. Unfortunately, he did not have much of the presence.
Right.
As everyone expected, he is on number 3. Number 1 is Green, and though ABC News has given the seat to Green again. Number 2 is LNP candidate, and number 3 is Mr. Polani. So it doesn't come out as any surprise. In city seat where Pinky Singh is contesting,
yeah.
Should it go to Pinky Singh, she pulls out a big surprise.
Right.
That one also is in doubt whether Labour would retain it. Most likely it could go to Green there.
Right.
Very, very strong Green presence. But they are calling in, they said, okay, it's just been called in favor of Labour. Labour retains that seat.
Right. Right. Now coming back to when you discuss about 2 candidates from the immigrants, do you think that program we discuss about how much the immigrants can make impact on the elections? Because it's a journey. People are coming because this time Professor Pitman also mentioned. I like to know from him also. At this stage, I like to know from Mr. Bernard Malik. Do you think that the people from Indo-Pakistan or other similar country are getting more involved in these things and getting and engaging and community services? How do you finding?
Yes, absolutely. I think there is a greater awareness about our role, especially from the point of view that you have mandatory voting here. Mandatory. Like in our country, it's voluntary. If you feel strongly you go and vote. If you don't feel, stay at home and enjoy. Over here is mandatory. Everybody has to vote.
Right.
With few people coming in, and I think people like you who have taken the lead to do this program on election, shows how much aware we are becoming. And I make sure I send this to my lot of MP friends and ministers that we are going in the air on TV tonight. And wow, that's nice. Can we? And some of them also, I mean, today it's not possible, but a lot of them also tune in.
Right.
So now they're getting to know that, yes, the immigrant community is becoming aware of their value as a vote bank.
Right,
So
right.
it's not seen as a big vote bank, but today when I was talking to Professor Pitman, he was telling me he was out there in campaign booths and all the immigrants were voting Labour.
Yes.
Yeah. And even the media news was that all the immigrants are voting Labour.
Right.
If that's what happens and Labour wins, trust me, in the next election, they will be seen as a vote bank.
Vote bank, yes, yes, and maybe many immigrants or Indians maybe be a part of Labour. I like to know from Professor Pitman. Professor Pitman, Dr. Bernard mentioned that in the polling booths, when you've been in the morning, he find a lot of activity from the immigrants. You also mentioned something that there was a prediction that Indians or the new migrants from these countries might support Green. However, now media also saying, you also see by yourself, what was the reason of this change and how do you find these in the morning, the engagement of the people there?
There's been a lot of research in Australia about how migrants vote, and the general research says that migrants vote generally along the party lines of the party that's in power. However, in more recent years, Labor has more policies that support migrants in offering services in English and how to deal with our legal systems and giving them some economic benefits. And the polling booth I was at yesterday, there were probably about 80 Indians came through in about a 4-hour period, and majority of them went to the Labor polling area to get their card on how to vote, or in our case, in our electorate, we have an Indian candidate for the Greens called Nav Singh, and 90% of them went over to talk to Nav Singh and took his how to vote card. Now, that's not saying that they voted for Nav Singh, but I was watching the Conservatives, and only 2 Indians came to the Conservatives to get their cards. And my wife was working at a very large booth today, and she said majority of Indians went to the Labor booth and took their how to vote cards. So, and they're suggesting that Queensland will be the state where more Indian migrants come to over the next decade. So you'll see more of them here and more politically involved. And my wife mentioned that the person who took over from her booth to hand out election cards was an Indian gentleman. Now, I've not seen that as much amongst the Indians as common involvement in politics. So I think the Indian people are going to have a significant part in Australian politics, and particularly Queensland, within the next decade.
Yeah, I think that's really, and we can see from engagement of the Dr. Bernard Malik since long time, and similar icon people, and ultimately the people from India, because the population from India is really big number, and I believe that they can start making the change in these areas. Professor Pitman, sometimes I call Bernard short, because he sometimes break news something which is very special and very unusual. He just break one Bernard shot, and he says the Labour did not win because of their efforts. They win because their liberal did not work very good, or they did not utilize their actions, their support. What is your opinion, Professor, on this, Dr. Bernard's analysis?
I think Dr. Bernard's probably fairly accurate. They had the previous Conservative Premier called Campbell Newman on,
Right.
and he basically said that the Conservatives' policies were not good enough to match Labor in just maintaining what they had. But he did say that he believed that Deb Fleckington would remain as the opposition leader for at least this term. There's another view that when you do your review after the election in political parties, if they believe that there hasn't been a significant performance in the results, quite often opposition leaders lose their position and they bring in new people into those key positions to see what they can do in 4 years of opposition to the government. So there's one view that she may stay and the policies will be accepted. There's another view that in the review she may not remain. So that's a standard practice. So I'm not sure that they were able to produce the policies that they needed to attract the votes. And I think the other difficulty is Deb Fleckington has got a very nice personality, but sometimes you need a bit more aggressive stance on things. And some see that as a good leadership quality. Some see it as not so good because it's not as a humble approach to things. So,
Dr. Malik, what do you like to say? Very aggressive or very humble? Again, it's a politics, and how you're looking with Dave's efforts, like Professor Pitman just mentioned.
I think I want to reinforce my point again.
Right.
Labour did not win, Liberals lost, and I would qualify that comment. When Newman became premier, he came and he did a massive job cuts. 17,000 people lost jobs in public sector.
Right.
So that has remained, and Labour played on that again and again and again and again. So that has become a kind of a taboo on LNP. And these people were not smart enough. 2 days before the election, they come out and say LNP to cut 3.2 billion from public sector. What is public sector? Public jobs, right? And that went against them. I knew as soon as the statement came in press that Liberal Party, LNP, is going to cut $3.2 billion from this. The message was out there right away. Oh, they're going to cut your jobs again. They'll remove you. They'll fire you. I remember listening to President Bush Senior. He was going against incumbency of 2 terms of President Reagan.
Right.
And see, tax and jobs are very close to everybody's heart, whether you, me, or Professor Grant, or a guy who doesn't even work. Reason being, everybody wants to have enough on their food, on their plate to eat.
Absolutely.
So Vice President Bush, at that time he was Vice President for Reagan, when he was nominated as Republican Party's candidate, he came out and said, "Watch my lips." This was his particular term. Watch my lips, no new taxes. And people felt, God, this is the guy we want to go. These people failed to do that. When they came out and said, we'll cut $3.2 billion from public sector, public services, or public sector, they should have also said, watch my lips, no jobs will be taken away, but will balance our budget. So I think somehow, though they had good intentions, they were poor communicators.
Right.
Now, does it surprise you they lost? No. Writing was on the wall all along. They did not have a narrative to give to people. Whereas Labour,
Right.
one sentence, we protected you from COVID. We protected you from COVID.
Yes.
And people saw they were
Yes.
protected. So here they go, vote.
Yes. So, Professor Dr. Malik, Professor Pitman, he just mentioned regarding the style of Liberal candidate, Deb, that she's good, she's very gentle, and there was a need of the more aggressive decision. What is your opinion on this?
Yeah, sometimes when you are a leader, being gentle is a minus quality.
Minus quality.
Yeah, you have to be very aggressive. You should be able to communicate. And nowadays, if you see some elections, they really get nasty. Though you don't have to get nasty, but you should be able to feel the sensitivities of people.
Right.
When a leader cannot feel the sensitivity of people, there is a problem. I remember, I don't know if Professor Pitman was with me when I asked Deb. I said, tell me which are the 9 seats you are going to take, because they needed 9 seats to win it. And she was at loss to explain. And I was laughing with the next guy. I said, if I was the leader, I would have said, oh, you're talking 9. We have planned to take 18.
18, yes.
Yes. And then we're sure to take 15 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And people get excited. Gosh, this guy, see, in Punjabi, a lot of our audience are Punjabi, right?
Yes.
Whatever you can see sells. If they can't see that the leader can spell out, instead of 9, they can spell out 18 electorates, yes, or 15, or even if 9, then they're not going to have the confidence to vote for you.
Right.
So somehow I think Deb, being a very nice, gentle lady, ran an excellent campaign, failed in communicating the message.
Right. Right. Okay. Professor Pitman, in our country, India, Pakistan, we the people does not aware that there is a call the minister, shadow minister. I like to know from you, what is the concept of the shadow minister? Because in our system, we don't have any shadow minister kind of systems. I just received a message from one of the viewers. What is the shadow minister? What is his role? And does the shadow minister is very powerful character or minister? And how does system works with the shadow minister?
In Australian politics, when a government's in power, the Premier or the Prime Minister appoints ministers, and it's usually about between 15 and 20 people, and they form the cabinet, the decision-making group of executive government, and they're very important positions, and all politicians seek after them. On the opposition side, they appoint an opposition leader and a shadow ministry. So they will have an equivalent 20 politicians who shadow the ministers of the government. And they're also very important because if you're running an election and you're the shadow minister, it's more than likely you will become the minister.
Professor, may I intervene for 1 second?
Yes.
Jackie Trade lost.
Lost.
So South Brisbane seat has gone to Greens.
Greens.
Yeah, so it is second Green seat now.
Yeah. Can I interject too, Bernard? Your friend Mark Robinson's picked up 57% of the vote. So
yes, I think I already congratulated him.
So Mr. Malik, Mark Robinson is winning, or he already confirmed that he won?
Well, they have declared that in his favor, that he has won. It was a very challenging seat. If you type in Mark Robinson MP, everywhere it says he's going to lose, because they put up. See, this country, though it would surprise you and it surprised me, though I'm Christian, though this country is Christian by name, there is a lot of hostility towards Christian politicians. And this is what they did to Tony. Tony was known as evangelist, or they would call him evangelist. He was very strong Christian. They put candidates, all this labor, everybody went, put money there, and they defeated him. Mark Robinson is known as a Christian guy here, so they brought in a lot of money, lot of power, and they brought in an independent candidate who almost uh, looked like liberal candidate, same value, moderate, a businesswoman, all the characteristics that go with the liberal candidate. And
Right.
then Labour preferenced that lady. So media
Right.
had almost written off Mr. Mark Robinson, and he won.
Right, right. That's really good. So, Mr. Bernard shot, another Bernard shot now. But before going this shot to Professor Pitman, I like Professor Pitman to continue. We did not completed the shadow minister concepts, and it was just in a half of. Can you just please continue? And because it came as a question from one of the viewers.
Yeah, when the opposition wins power, the shadow ministers generally, not always, becomes the minister. So if you're the shadow minister for education, you are the spokesperson for the opposition for, speaking against the minister for education. So you shadow that minister. And then if you win election, most times the shadow minister becomes the minister. And then the opposition, or the people who become the opposition in government, then appoint shadow ministers from the opposition.
In this situation,
So
Professor
they swap sides.
Right. In this situation, it looked like that in Australian system there is a ruling period for the ruling party, but the opposition also have an opportunity to rule when work as a shadow minister. So both parties were ruling by the time.
Not directly. The shadow minister is the spokesperson for the opposition, so they don't really rule. They're just a spokesperson on behalf of the opposition who says this is our policy and it's contrary to the minister's policy. So when the shadow minister wins government, that person says, well, this is what we said was our policy, so we now change it. The minister who was in government, when they lose, he becomes the shadow. And it's what they call a convention. In other words, it's not law, it's not a rule, it's a convention, it's a practice they have.
Right. Thank you. Now, coming back to the Bernard shot, he just mentioned about Tony Abbott. He just mentioned about the Mark Robinson, and you know what he mentioned. He mentioned about that. I'm asking Professor Pitman. Dr. Bernard, he just mentioned that sometimes the religion, especially the Christianity, the people there is a lot of against. I'd like to know about your opinion. Do you think the religion also play a role in the election as a candidate, Professor Pitman?
The regions play a role. Certainly do. I'll just go back to Bernard's question on religion as well. In this election, the Labor government came out and said they supported euthanasia, medical assisted deaths, which I call a moralistic policy. They're also going to change the abortion laws to give longer time frames for abortion.
Right.
Now, if you were here in Australia 30 years ago, when Christianity was very strong, they'd lose government over those two policies.
Right.
But there was very, very little said about those moral policies. And the Premier came out and said she's very much a Christian or religious, but she wants to give the people what they want,
Right.
was her view. And as I said, 20 or 30 years ago, she would have lost government over those types of policies, but not now. The regional issues, Deb Flackington spent more time in the regions than in Brisbane, and it now shows that the results are showing that in Brisbane they haven't picked up any seats. If anything, they've lost seats. So she's tried to strengthen the vote in the regional area, but hasn't really done that. And a couple of the minor parties have picked up seats, like the Katter Party looks like it's got 2 seats. I'm not sure about One Nation. I think it might have 1 seat. So in the regional area, where the opposition leader thought she could win, hasn't had any change other than minor parties. And in Brisbane, she's actually losing where the majority of seats are. She didn't spend much time in Brisbane, only the last 2 days.
Right. Yeah. Now, before proceeding to the Dr. Bernard Malik, what is the current results with Professor Pitman with you? Professor Pitman, what is the current results with you? What is the numbers game now? Yeah.
It's actually saying that Labor's numbers have dropped from 46 back to 44. In other words, the polling booths, the bigger polling booths are coming in.
Yes.
So they now need 3 seats.
3 seats.
And the Conservative Party, the Liberal National Party, has 28 seats, so they can't win. The independent seats are 8, and there's still 13 seats that haven't been decided. So Labor still has to find now another 3 seats.
3 seats. Yeah. Right. Going back to that, Dr. Bernard Malik. Dr. Bernard, now it's like very interesting situation. Before 15 minutes, the Labour needs only 1 seat. Now they need 3 seats. It's coming back to our country elections, and that's the thrill in election we have. But unfortunately, from Liberal side, the results is not coming up. You know, ultimately, if you have the one party going down, if they come up, but they're still very far from there. Now, the Anna, she was very active in the regional area as well as city area. However, as Professor Pitman mentioned, the Deb did busy in the regional, but not in the city, and that is the result. They did not have any win from the city. Do you think that one of the reason? And plus, how you are looking the fluctuation in the results?
May I address the previous point of shadow ministers?
Yeah, please.
Yes, I'll make it very simple in our language.
Yeah.
The government that gets elected and forms a government gets a cabinet.
Right.
And opposition that sits outside also gets a cabinet.
Right.
So what happens is the government in power has a cabinet that works, and the opposition has a cabinet that criticizes the government. And so if government has a minister of education, opposition has a minister of education. The only difference is the government's minister of education is known as minister of education, and the other guy is known as minister of education shadow. And then what happens technically is the shadow minister is being trained when his government comes to take that department or portfolio. So he knows well what are the problems with the portfolio and he can do it. So it's a minister in training in the opposition. But unfortunately in Queensland, the word shadow is such a bad word. The shadow minister has always stayed shadow minister. He has never become a minister here. Because Liberal Party formed government only once in last 26 years. So all the shadow ministers have stayed shadow ministers. Okay, coming to these people, look, we have this always in our country, regional balances, caste balances, and all that with the ruling party and the political parties. This is what they try to play the trick this time. They brought it a lady from regional area, hoping they could gain a couple of seats in the regional area. And they brought in the deputy leader from the city. So they try to balance it. Unfortunately, the game hasn't paid off for them.
Yes.
What is happening here is the Pinky Singh seat has actually now gone to Greens. So Greens have 3 seats now. They took the critical seats.
I think that was one of your prediction, and Professor Pitman, that this time green score is going to be different.
Correct. Yeah. So Labour has lost 2 seats to Greens. One was that McCarran city seat, and second is South Brisbane seat.
But once at the end, if we are going to count the total, you both mentioned that the green seat, mostly it's counted with the Labour side.
Yes. So what would happen is if there is a minority government government could be they have only 46 seats, or they have 45 seats, which I think they already have 45. I don't think it's going to be minority government. They would form government because the seats Liberals were hoping to get were Mansfield seat, that's neighbouring street to Chandler where I live. That Labour has retained. They were getting couple more seats. They were hoping in Redland areas. Henry was very strong candidate. He didn't win. So Liberals have not gained any seats. Labour has retained those seats, and Labour has probably lost 2 seats that we know now, Jackie Trad and Grace, who was a minister. But I think they will gain from some other seats.
Right. Professor Pitman, now coming back to the Dr. Bernard, he already mentioned shadow minister remains all the time shadow minister. Being a political analyst, do you think that if you already have a shadow minister in last term and before terms, it is, and you did not make very tight, or you did not find the mistake from the active minister, do you think that the party should decide to change the shadow minister and bring somebody new to have a different tightness on the minister, or view from the minister?
What you're talking about regularly happens. In today's paper called the Courier Mail, there's been a criticism that the Premier has 4 ministers who haven't performed and may have caused problems. And the same argument occurs with the shadow ministers. And when they do their review after the election with the shadow ministers, regularly almost a third or a half of them will change. The only issue that you need to be aware of is that the appointment of shadow ministers are connected to particular groups within the party machinery. For example, in Labor, ministers' appointments, or shadow ministers if they're in opposition, is decided by a caucus, and it depends on which faction has more power as to who gets in. In the Conservatives, generally they go on performance, but they also have factions. So they get appointed probably by factions within the parties and friendships, and sometimes somebody who's not competent is there because they have support of a faction. And it's not until they actually make a serious error do they lose their portfolio, or after an election, if they believe they've performed badly, then they will remove quite a few of them and bring some new blood in to try and see if they can improve their performance. Right.
Mr. Malik, let's have a difficult question from you. We believe, and you also very, very much value the manners, the life. Now, if you see that in the current era, the law, same-sex marriage, and few similar kind of laws came, and then it's very difficult for the leaders to keep their side on these things from the as a Christian-based country. Do you think that in future, for the next terms, they are going to face few more laws similarly, and how these laws can be handled?
Look, I think there is a crisis of conscience in this country now.
Right.
What is happening is the vocal minority and silent majority is big now, right now. So me and Dr. Pitman, we have a very conservative values, right? And if we sit down and have that's one reason for our bonding. We bond together, we work together because we share the same value system. But if you really think about what is happening out there, I think only 35% people identify themselves as Christians in Australia now.
Right.
Is that the figure, Dr. Pitman, or I'm wrong?
No, you're very close to the mark. So
Yes. And when I came from US is known as a playboy country. You know, the culture and all that, they bring in glamour, all that. But in US, I used to see that Sunday morning, people will dress up, put suit and tie, wash their car, churches full of people, the parking lots full. So no matter what they do, they gave one day to God on Sundays. And
Right.
if you know, the best dress is known as Sunday dress.
Right.
Because people value to go to church dressed very well and looking good.
Right.
When I came here 10 years ago, I got cultural shock. You know, I would ask, are you Christian? Oh, look, my dad was Baptist, my mother was Catholic, but I don't go to church. But then I did go to church, I'm sorry, few times, and churches were probably 80% empty.
80% empty.
Yes, the 20% that were full were older people,
Older people.
the retirees. You could not find younger generation out in churches, especially mainline churches. When we talk about mainline churches, means Catholics, Methodists, Anglicans. So there is the influence of Christianity is diminishing in this country.
Right.
And churches, you would know, and for that matter, you practice Islam, you would know, they are big moral voice and moral authority on a lot of issues. When you see the father is weak, indiscipline creeps in the family. Same way, when you see the moral guardian, the church that is moral guardian, or the religious institutions have been weakened to a level, then the society would have a diluted value system.
Right.
That is where when you said, you know, same-sex marriage,
Yes.
that got passed here. Unfortunately, it got passed under liberal government that claims to have higher values. Because 3 or 4% of the people were very vocal, and 97% of the people that did not like what was happening were too silent.
Too silent.
Same thing happened here. They passed late-term abortion in Queensland, which you and me and all three of us and many of our listeners who come from conservative countries or from there are against it.
Yes.
But Labour government passed it, and 3 people from Liberal government crossed the floor to help them pass it.
Right.
And my own MP, where I'm sitting in Chandler,
Yeah.
where my house is a Liberal MP, Steve Menniken, and he voted for it. So what is happening is, as the influence of religious institutions is diminishing, the values are being compromised. And trust me, if this is the way it goes, 20, 30 years from now, or your kids and my kids or my kids' kids won't recognize this country as Christian.
Right. Let me get the opinion from Professor Pitman. I like to have some difficult question, and because we have people, they already have the knowledge, they have the experience, they have the wisdom. So I think some other day I like to have Dr. Bernard in some other show and Professor Pitman, and the topic which I like learn from Professor Pitman or maybe Dr. Bernard, crisis identity, and that day we will cover the thing. Now coming back to the Professor Pitman. Professor Pitman, minor are vocals and majority is too silent. Wonderful word. Minors are vocal and things are happening. This is the dilemma of our time. You know, being religion, any religion, every religion has a discipline system and ultimately has the ethics value and then moral values ultimately at the end. What is your opinion? However, it's not part of our subject, but as long we saw that there all ruling came, same-sex marriage or similarly some other, as Doctor mentioned. Do you think what is the religion role and the observation of Dr. Malik from the USA and here? Why do you think that the Christianity is losing or the youth is losing interest in Christianity?
I think a little bit of it's to do with our historical background. America was formed by a Christian type people who had a constitution that had an emphasis on Christian values.
Right.
Here in Australia, we were brought here as convicts predominantly, and churches were used to rehabilitate us.
Right.
So the European Australians have always been a little skeptical of churches, and particularly churches' involvement with politics.
Right.
In America, although there is theoretically a separation between religion and politics, here in Australia, they're very definite that there should be a distinction between them. I think also there is a rise in what they call the New Age religion. I think a lot of people who are coming from Muslim countries have got very good values, and they're standing up for it. The Polynesian people stand up for their values. I think also the Indian people generally have pretty good, strong values. But the Christian values, I think, have not been accepting of churches' role in politics, and probably have not seen any real benefit out of connecting with churches and politics. So I think it's an historical factor. I think there is a change with the migrants, though, and I'm impressed with people from India, from Muslim countries, and from the Pacific Islands have very strong religious and moral values, and perhaps we could learn a lot from them.
Right. Now, coming back to our topic of the day, analysis of the Queensland election, I have a question, but before raising the question, I'd like to know, Professor Pitman, what is the results, current results now?
The current results are that LNP has 46 seats again. No, Labor has 46 seats. The LNP, the Conservatives, have 31 seats. There are 7 seats by independents and 9 in doubt. So again, Labor just needs one more of those 9 seats to gain power. And LNP will probably have lost, I think, probably 5 or 6 seats.
That's the only difference which we already discussed in our program. Professor Pitman, the voting finished at 7 and the results start now. It's almost 8:50. Now, what is the reason in your experience? What could be the reason that where the 9 seats results is extended in time? Why?
Mainly because the counts are too close. In other words, there's only 100 difference in the votes, and the postal votes may not have arrived back to the electoral office. So there may be 100 votes in the postal votes waiting to be counted in the electoral office. So they have to wait till all of those postal votes come back in to be able to count them in. And if the majority is only 100 votes, that's where it becomes critical. And so the 9 that are in doubt, there will probably be 4 or 5 that are very, very close in the number of votes, and they've got to wait till the postal votes come in next week. So the total number probably won't be, of seats divided up, will not be known until probably late next week.
Right. Dr. Bernard Malik, in your past shows, you mentioned a few times about 7-8 seats going to be very close, very tight. With the number current, which Professor Pitman mentioned, look like that we are only short of 9 seats. Do you think also that that is the reason that it might possible that we this time we have more number of the seat very close margin with a few percentage? Do you think that is the reason?
Yes, I think this election hasn't pulled off many surprises other than what was expected.
Right.
If you see if anything that has happened is pretty much on the lines of what they were saying. They were most expected seat to go was South Brisbane seat. They said Jackie Trad would lose it, and she lost it. Other than that, LNP hasn't gained. LNP was hoping to gain Redland seat. They did not gain. They were hoping to see Toowoomba seat, which was held by 1% margin. They didn't gain it. Gavin seat, LNP was hoping in Gold Coast that Labour was holding it 0.4%, not even 1% seat, and 5,000 new people had moved in that electorate. LNP didn't gain it. They were hoping to gain Mansfield seat, that's close by here. A lady from a pastor from City Point Church was contesting it. She was very popular. She had taught in that school, so there was a lot of regional impact. That seat was actually held previously by LNP. They did not gain that. So, did they gain anything? I'm not sure. It's too early to say if they gained anything. Have they lost? Yes, they definitely lost. One, the expected seats that they wanted to win, they didn't win. Labour has lost a couple of seats that they were retaining them. No, it's too early to say what the result would be by tomorrow evening. But by all means, it looks like Labour is in control and Labour will form the government.
Right. So we almost, Professor Pitman, now Dr. Bernard mentioned that there was a few seats only remaining. In your analysis, it's the same also that the Labour also lost the seats and Liberal also lost the seats. This is one observation. That indicates that the voters which supported independent or green are not supporting Liberal and Labour, and they supported more. However, the green and independent does not do anything for the public.
I think one of the issues that's occurring in politics in Australia is that the big parties aren't able to engage everyone anymore, and the minor parties are actually starting to put up policies that engage. For example, out in the regional areas, some of the smaller parties are pushing country values, farming, agriculture. Some are into the Shooters Party arrangements. So they're pushing very specific policies that the country people want and are getting support. The Greens policies, which have generally been for conservation, have broadened. For example, in our area, the Green candidate was pushing for a public hospital. And I've never heard a Green candidate had anything else other than the environment. Now he's talking about a public hospital. So they're hitting the right buttons for people. And I think a lot of the public vote for very specific issues. And if the party pushes that, people will vote for it. So I think that has been a key. The other issue is money. It's when you go to a polling booth here in Australia, you know if a party has money by the number of posters and streamers along the fence. And when you go to the polling booths at the moment, Labor literally has all the fences and all the footpaths with posters everywhere. And some of the wealthier independent parties, the Greens in Jackie Tran's area, had posters and signs everywhere, and they would have a dozen people handing out how to vote cards.
Right.
You rarely ever saw that. And the Conservatives are complaining because they changed the legislation and they weren't able to make the money to be able to advertise and to push their policies as well. So money to the parties has also become a central issue here.
Right, wonderful. Professor Dr. Bernard Malik, do you like to add on this point of view also, that the Labour also lost the few seats, Liberal also lost the few seats, however Independent was not in the power, but they are getting values, and Professor Pitman already mentioned that Green is now talking about the hospital. Do you think another reason, or do you like to add something? We are almost at the end of our show.
Okay, two interesting observations that I want to add.
Yeah.
Dr. Pitman, the seat of Bribey Island that has gone to Labour, it was held by Liberal. So Liberals lost that seat. I knew the MP there very well. You know, we have a common friend there who is a high-profile party official there. And the second observation is seat of Stratton. Liberal Party had put in a Chinese candidate there, who created a big controversy by saying, by putting an advertisement in Chinese newspaper saying Chinese should vote only for Chinese candidates. And the Chinese concentration is in Sunnybank, and Sunnybank was part of Stratton. Labour, Duncan has retained that seat, so it's interesting. There are only 3 candidates who are of, South Asian origin.
Right.
Pinky Singh, I don't think she's going to get the seat.
Right.
Umar Pilani, he has already lost it. Stratton, John, the Chinese candidate, lost it. So the current election, if anything, LNP has lost, didn't gain anything up to now.
Right. Okay, wonderful. Professor, thank you very much. Dr. Bernard Malik, thank you very much. I think the result is not yet finished, so it is almost 85 result is there and 15% is still balanced. Professor Pitman, do you mind and do you allow Dr. Bernard Malik, because channel and as a few of our viewers are asking to have a post-election talk tomorrow, and the result will be clear, the seat will be clear, so we can discuss about the objective of the new government, and then the reasons of the failures, and then the possibility of the success. Do you think that you have time for tomorrow, having same time post-election show?
I'm probably not available tomorrow, but I would be on Monday.
Monday. Okay. Professor, Dr. Bernard Malik.
I'm fine. I don't have any.
Okay. So we will have a post-election talk on Monday. I think let me thanks to Dr. Bernard Malik. However, there was a storm of election, but his prediction already handled the storm of election. However, because of our dip, he is not with us by his video. But thank you very much, sir. Professor Grant, thank you very much, sir. And ultimately, today's talk was very specific about the results. And before closing, Professor Grant, do you like to share the current situation of the results with our viewers?
The current prediction again has Labor at 44 seats, so there are 3 still to go to get majority. The LNP, the Conservatives, have 32 seats. There are 7 independent seats and 10 in doubt. So it's still in the balance, but Labor certainly looks like it will end up back in government.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much. You also mentioned for the Labour government. Dr. Bernard already mentioned also for the Labour government. Monday, 7:30, we will see that how the overall show is going, what KPI is going to be set for the new government. Other than COVID, the financial job seeker, job keeper, how they are going to manage all these things. And ultimately, we have experts. And these experts are really have valuable information which help us and our young. So this is over from Shoaib from 72 News Studio. We will back on Monday and discuss about who's going to form the government, how the situation is going, and by the time the result will be clear. Till that time, thank you very much. See you on Monday. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.